going back to the drawing board and figuring out how to play the game. I mean, it's literally, I
100%.
mean, marketing is 100% a game. And my favorite part is when people will say that they're an expert in marketing. I'm like, you don't ever become an expert in marketing. You don't.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, this is not what we originally talked about. I know we're streaming now, but
Yeah,
but I think this is really important. I have watched over the last 10 years. I started out in my corporate life pounding my head against the brick wall, trying to get them to understand how important and critical social media, social platforms were. And the
absolutely.
CEOs, the chief marketing officers, all of those guys like, nah, it's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. Fast forward, coming through 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I stepped out of the corporate world, started into an e-com situation, and built a huge company strictly on affiliates and strictly on Facebook marketing. And then Facebook decided to throw a monkey wrench into that and go from organic reach into paid traffic. And then they started restricting, and it was like this thing after this thing. And golly, I've never seen so many things evolve so quickly when it comes to the social media aspect. And whether it's YouTube, you remember back when Foursquare was a thing?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was huge. I thought for sure that was going to pop, and then all of a sudden it just like disappeared. It's gone. Like
It's how
what?
it is with a lot of things. And I mean, even sometimes these people that are putting mega dollars behind all these programs don't even realize what's going to happen. I mean, Google did it with Google Plus.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
thought
that's
Google
boom.
Plus was going to completely take off and be the next social media. And then what accidentally happened was Google My Business, like the GMB side took off, but they wasn't intending that to actually be a thing, really. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
they
and with
it was
that
going to be
take
just an ad. Yeah.
right, and then with that taking off, they're now doing Google Leads, which is now
Yep.
competing with people like Home Advisor, Angie's List, and so on. I don't know all the inner workings and who owns what, but you can definitely see a competition on that because people go to Google to search for things.
Absolutely.
And
Well,
it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with TikTok. I'm really curious about that, and that
I am too.
it really leads to our, I guess, our one word that we were talking about, chaos.
Yes. It's one of my favorite words. I've made it my favorite word because it's either make it my favorite word and accept that that's just a part of my everyday
Yeah,
life or look at it as a negative. And so, I think it's always better to try to take something and turn it into a positive, make the lemonade from the lemons, so to say.
absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, so I actually give me a second because I've got people asking about the on live event. I got
Yeah.
to
They're probably like,
redirect them.
where? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
I've got people messaging me like, where are you at? What's going
we
on? So,
can't find you. I've got the same
yeah,
thing going on.
yeah, it's like, what's going on? You said you were going to be live. So,
Yeah. And actually, I could put it in Messenger for you here, just the
yeah,
YouTube
let's do
link,
that.
because it's live on YouTube. Anybody that's actually found us, we are live right now on YouTube. I'm changing all the links. We talked about just probably before we went live that Facebook and Zoom's not been playing so well lately, and might need to look into all that actually, but
Yeah,
that's not for today. Today, we're just going with the flow. We're
yeah,
embracing our
exactly.
chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
All right, so I need to send this out to a couple people here. Again, apologies for
no,
people
you're
watching
good.
live. They're all like, what the heck? Why do you guys just stop talking? It's like, we're dealing with our chaos,
This
man.
is the chaos. We are literally going to be talking about chaos today, so you are getting to see it in action. We don't
Yeah,
we don't
this is
just
how you
talk
adapt
about
and
it.
overcome. Yeah, we
Yeah.
live it, man.
Yes,
We
this is
live it.
this is life. And I think honestly, that's one of the things this year. I've had discussions a lot with people about the subject of just, COVID and being resourceful and pivoting and, embracing just the chaos of life
Of course.
because, there are different flavors of chaos, different, ways that chaos can, come up in our everyday life. But one thing that kind of remains true is just the fact that chaos is an inevitable part of life. I mean, it just is,
Yeah.
and if we don't figure out how to embrace it, then we are going to, end up being eaten alive by all the crap that comes on because we're going to be stopping and trying to figure out what to do all the time and kind of get lost in the weeds of it instead of just kind of going with the flow and saying, okay, well, this isn't the way I planned it. However, I'm going to pivot and do it like this. And I think that is huge. And I think being resourceful is a great quality to have.
Yeah. Let me post this last one, and then that
No,
way
you're
I've got
good.
that.
You are good. I've been posting too.
It's funny that picture they got me with my eyes closed.
That's all
That's a
right. I look
very
like I'm
attractive
about
picture.
I look like I'm about to beat somebody up. Look at my face. I'm like, that's it. Meet
Yeah.
me meet me at the playground. Look at my face. So
Well, that goes well with your background. Didn't you train?
I did. I
Yeah.
did MMA,
Yeah.
and for a hot minute. And I actually, there was parts of it I loved. I loved obviously the athletic side. I've always been very much an adrenaline junkie, but I did not love getting hit in the face. And if you look real close on my eyes, I've got scars from getting hit in the face, and I always joke around and say that intelligent people don't like getting hit in the face usually. And you do that enough, then you start figuring out, okay, I've got to figure out something else because
Well,
this
and
is
some of the
not my jam.
challenges that, yeah, your brain bouncing against your
Yep.
skull so many different times. All right, AC is on. Welcome, AC.
Hello.
Texting.
Yep. Some people are on here. We're here.
Yeah, we're here. We're just dealing with.
Facebook wasn't playing nice this morning, so here we are on YouTube.
Yep.
I guess this is good for YouTube. It's good for my YouTube channel. It's really funny. It's like, the old joke that electricians have the worst electric and plumbers have the worst plumbing. That old joke. I am technically YouTube certified, and my YouTube channels are horrendously embarrassing. I mean, they
Yeah.
are. I have not spent the time. It's like, and I'll be talking to people about their YouTube channels, and they're like, well, send me yours. I'm like, well, this is a case of do what I say, not necessarily as I'm doing right now. This is a case of I need to work on mine. But we spend so much time working on clients. It's like, by the time that you're done working on client work, it's like you don't want to do your own.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. It's amazing how, and this is, I think, truly part of it is the fact that when it's your own baby, it's really hard to see it.
It is.
I deal with
so
that
much.
in my own life, and when you're really close to it, it's hard to see the direction and the path that you need to take, especially with all the noise that's out there.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of goes to what I say all the time on, just the fact that consultants need consultants and coaches need
100%.
I mean, they really do. And I know it's hard. And trust me, and you know this because you consult and you coach as well, that, it's super hard when, I mean, you cognitively know the things that you need to do and the things that are going to help push you forward, but you sit and you think about a lot of the details of it so long because, well, you almost feel the pressure to do it extra perfect because you are a consultant and you are a coach.
Yeah.
But the problem with worrying about perfection on a lot of these things and not just kind of going with the flow a bit is the fact that you can spend so much time, and by the time you actually get something that you're happy enough with to go ahead and present, the moment's passed, and I see that happen so often with clients. And I've had that, I've experienced that myself, where I've had something, I've sat and questioned myself, well, what are they going to think? Well, this isn't, to the best of my ability, but it was still good. It was still quality. And I was so worried about the tiny little details on the stuff that probably nobody besides me would have noticed, that I didn't go ahead and put it out there. And that's, that's about the time that I started teaching that class, which I haven't taught it in a while, called Ugly Launch. And it was just the idea of, obviously we're not putting together a big pile of crap and throwing it out there, but putting together good, valuable stuff. And don't worry about the fine little minute details, because I would be, doing a presentation slides and I'd spend hours, and I wish I was exaggerating, but I'm not, hours, on the little details of making it all pretty. And I, you're clicking through there, and I can guarantee you probably no one even noticed the tiny little details that I just spent hours of my time doing.
100%. I just had this conversation with one of my clients, and he was talking about how he had to have everything exactly perfect in order to be able to go and to be able to launch. And it came down, a good friend of mine, Ian Garlic. I don't know if he's great video guy. Awesome. He's out in Florida. But he has a statement, especially as he's launching out his videos and as he does production, version done is better than version none. Absolutely. And so often we get caught up in that perfection, and we forget that our life is chaotic, that our life is frankly just all chaos, and we seek to have that perfection, and therefore we never get anything completed.
I absolutely agree. And I know, I have Post-it notes all over my office. I wish I could turn my camera, but it's stuck on my computer. But I have them all over the place. It says done is more profitable than perfect, 100%. Because I know this about myself. I mean, I know there's a fine line. There is a fine line between slapping stuff together and not having it good, and spending a crap ton of extra time that didn't need to be spent on it, because, version 1.0 is version 1.0. And a lot of times what ends up happening.
My dog's throwing up.
Oh, you're good.
Come on.
You're good. We're talking about chaos anyway. So see, this is it. We all are real people. We all have real lives. I've had it, which I'm in my office right now, but I've had it where I've been live or recording, and I thought I locked my door at my house. My kids come barreling in. I've got a 3-year-old climbing on my lap, and I'm like, all right, this is exactly what we're talking about. It's chaos.
Yeah, chaos is it, man.
So,
my dog's throwing up and everything. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show, peoples.
Yep. So I actually, there's several episodes I tell this exact story that, embracing your chaos of life is the most important thing you can do. And I use the example that, a lot of times we get, and this goes back to what we were talking about, the perfection thing. We get so stuck in the planning phases on everything that we don't actually make the move, and we don't plan, for the chaos, and it ends up, balking us up. Because I know there's been times where there's one time in particular that I had it all, I mean, literally it all planned. I've been planning this big, giant, life-changing meeting for like weeks. And I had my presentation on point. I bought a new outfit. I had my hair done. I was like, I was ready. I was ready to rock this meeting. So, I get my kids in the car and I'm taking them to the babysitter. I want them projectile vomits from the back seat. And that's a good example, because it's not that it was not because of a lack of planning that I had to reschedule the meeting. It was not for a lack of anything that I necessarily did. It was just chaos of life. And, I think a lot of times we forget that we wear all these hats, and there is something to be said for wearing too many hats. You have to think about what hats do I want to wear and what hats are important to me.
Well, it's a focus, right?
Exactly. But some of the hats are just inevitable. Lots of us are spouses, lots of us are parents, lots of us are, sons and daughters. And we have all these hats that obviously we want to keep. We don't want to stop wearing those hats. But, with that comes added chaos, and everyone you add is going to be added chaos. And that's why it's so important to really think about every hat you decide to put on, because that's going to add to the chaos. And, something's going to have to give sometimes. I mean, obviously I love my kids. I wouldn't change having my kids. And, the fact that they projectile vomited from the back seat did not make me want to take off my mom hat. Okay, I'm gonna lie. It made me want to take it off for a moment and have somebody else clean up the vomit out of my car. But, for the long term, it didn't make me not want to be a mom anymore, but I think it's important to kind of think about those things, because if you don't already in your mind prepare yourself for the fact that chaos is inevitable, that could have completely derailed me. I could have, and I know people this happened to, and I've had those moments, I've had those thoughts myself, like, I quit. This is not for me. I shouldn't be doing this. This is exactly why, we start letting those thoughts infect our head. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, those thoughts did cross my mind. Why am I doing this? How can I manage a business like this and effectively be a mom? And you let that stuff get to you. But luckily I didn't let those thoughts stay in my mind very long. I pivoted and I said, okay, well, how can I, try to rescue this situation, triage this situation the best I can? Obviously, number one is get my kid home, get, him settled and taken care of. And, number two, be able to salvage the potential relationship with this client. And, a lot of times people try to make up these like crazy excuses. And I find, just be honest. Most people understand that we're all human. We're all layered. And, I just kind of made it a joke, and I told the truth. I called. I'm like, all right, well, I was on my way, take the kids to the sitter. One of them projectile vomited from the backseat. I'm assuming you don't want me to bring them, to the meeting, and the sitter's not going to take them today. So can we regroup and do a Zoom call later? And they said, yeah, I still got that account, but I could have freaked out and said it wasn't for me and not even tried and all these things, and I would have never really known. And I think that instead of, reacting to these moments, if you embrace just the chaos, it's just part of it. And it becomes a story I tell all the time now, and people can relate to it because they've also been through similar things,
Yep. Yeah, I heard two distinct things coming out of that little bit of a story of what you're talking about, and I think we could probably dive in and even talk about this more. Number one is the fact that society teaches us or tells us that life is going to be a perfectly balanced walk on a plank or a beam, and it's not. That's an impossibility. And I truly, fully believe in the fact of it's impossible to have a perfectly balanced life. That's the first thing. The second thing is the fact of when you're looking at all of the things that are going on. Actually, it just slipped my mind, so I'm not even sure what the second thing is there. So that's what happens when you go live.
We'll come back to it. It'll probably.
But the balancing is huge, because my mind just ran about 50,000 different directions in that. But the key element is that when I talk to men, especially, and they're talking about balance and trying to manage some of the chaos and trying to manage some of the things that are going on in their lives. They look at it, okay, I'm going to walk down this beam. This beam is my personal life. On the right-hand side, left-hand side, I've got my family. On the right-hand side, I've got my business. And I'm going to divide my time equally between these two parts. And I'm going to have to keep my life right on this beam. And so you're walking down, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, like you just said, something happened. Some sickness happened. We had 2020 happen. And all of a sudden, the weight of everything is now on the business. Or there was a sickness in the family, and the weight of everything now goes back to the family. And one of the things that I was able to take, and it's a mindset shift, is you look at it from, I am no longer walking this balance beam. I am really the fulcrum, and everything else is sitting on top. And so as the weight of the business or the weight of the family goes back and forth, I can adjust my time with this fulcrum to the spots of where it's needed. Now, granted, if you leave it on the business too long, well, what's going to happen with the family is they're going to start to need you longer, need you more, and that's going to start to weigh down. So if you don't shift and you don't adjust, then obviously the family's going to crash and burn. Same thing with the business. And there's times when there's requirements. And this is a conversation that I've had with my wife and with the family. We get, because I own my own business, we get a lot of privileges and a lot of cool things, and we get to go on vacations, and we get to, spend 2 weeks down in Florida when it gets really cold up here in the north, the northern tundra of Michigan, right? But at the same time, there are times when I have to set that day aside to be able to go back on coaching calls. And it's this balance of being able to say, okay, guys, look, this is why we get to come 2 weeks here, but I got to take this Thursday because these are my coaching calls.
Absolutely.
And it's that balance of that. And once I think you explain that to your kids and to your family, and you understand, like, okay, this is why we get to do this, because we live this lifestyle. Now you can adjust, but there has to be that clear communication and that the open channels of communication going through things. So anyway, I don't know if you want to go down too far that road, but
no, I mean, I think that's important. And I think that goes along with, I use the analogy. I love analogies, as you probably have been able to tell from me, but I use the analogy all the time that, we a lot of times think that this work-life balance is like just this thing that just balances out, and it doesn't. It's more like playing the balloon game. For me, that's my analogy. That there's balloons in the air, and you ever play the balloon game where you're just trying to keep them from hitting the ground, right? And to me, that's kind of how life is, you take your balloon and decide, okay, I want this balloon, and then I throw it up in the air. And so you're constantly running around just trying to keep them popped up in the air. And much like you mentioned, if you focus too much on your business balloons, and I've made this mistake before, you start to notice that, the family balloons are about to hit the ground. They're about to hit the ground. It's imploding from the inside out. So you have to run over there and start to try to pop them up again. But then what happens is your business balloons, are starting to fall down toward the ground. And I think, to me, that is a better analogy of balancing for myself, because I have it in my mind like that. And I can say, okay, my idea of balancing is they're never going to be on the same level. They're going to be all over the place at any given time, because even though most women, we pride ourselves in our multitasking abilities, there's, multitasking at a very core level doesn't exist, because you cannot do things at the exact same time.
Right,
you just can't. Yes, I can switch gears and pivot easily. I'm used to having to do that as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner. I'm used to having to do that. But, multitasking, if you kind of rewind it, what is the definition of multitasking is you can't effectively do that. So you have, if you're focusing on one balloon and popping that up in the air, your other balloons are kind of falling toward the ground over here. So you have to be consciously aware of, what balloons are in the air. And if you're having a problem keeping them all up in the air, you need to ask yourself, what balloons do I need to get rid of? And that was my problem for the longest time is, I had this poor ability to have boundaries on things. I would take on anything and everything. And it didn't matter what it was. If it was exciting, interesting, I felt that it would be a good move for me. Just literally fill in the blank. If it was positive, Maria was saying yes. I was like, yeah, I can do that. But the problem is I had so many freaking balloons, I couldn't even see them all. And so then stuff's crashing and burning. And, it took me actually having to figure out and say, okay, I can't do all the things. As much as I love to think that I can do all the things, I can't do all the things. So some of these balloons are going to have to go, and it goes back to, we talk about in business all the time, the, delegate and delete, I had to do that.
Yeah. when you're talking about all these things and making the decisions, it's funny because I'm actually thinking about the people with different personalities and how the personalities are all working together right now.
Yeah.
There is going to be some very distinct D type people on this conversation. They listen to it and they're probably going to listen for about 5 minutes and then they're going to jump out because they're like, okay, get to the point. I don't need.
Yeah.
But the high I's, the people that are the S's, those part in the disc profile, they're all like, yeah, I love this conversation, love this part.
Absolutely.
So let me speak to the D's for a minute, because what you're talking about is with all these things and making decisions on what could and what is and how this is all happening, because the D's are the drivers. They're the people that we're going to get this done no matter what.
Yep.
And then they basically forsake the relationship in effort to be able to get the objective and get the task completed, right?
Absolutely.
And in this situation, making decisions is a critical foundational principle. That's absolutely one of the hardest things for me, is being able to learn what I need to let go of and what I need to be able to hang on to. And it comes down to this. And I'm over 40 now. And I've struggled with this all the way up through past my 40s. And it's only been in the last 2 or 3 years. And I realized how critical, and I'm going to get a couple eye rolls on this, I know it, but how critical your purpose statement is in your own life as well as in your business. Because that purpose statement defines why you're doing what you're doing. It also defines what it is that you're going to be able to accomplish and what you should and should not let go of. Because if we know exactly what our purpose is here, both for our family and for our business, that gives us the ability to easily say no to something that's good, but it may not be great. And I'm referencing back to Jim Collins in his book. But what we often do is we see, hey, will you come serve on the school board? Will you come help out with this sale? Will you come help? Those are all good things. But if your great is your dedication to the family and spending time, and you've only got a certain amount of years with your kids, if that is the great thing and you sacrifice the great for the good of going on a school board, you're really risking the relationship with your kids, because you're doing something good and it's not bad. It's just, what is your purpose? What is the thing? So if we funnel down, and as a driver, I'm able to look at this and say, okay, I know exactly what my guiding star, my North Star. To me, when I look at purpose, I look at it from the aspect of what is that North Star that's going to direct my life. It's not something that I'm ever going to attain, but it's something that's going to allow me to make all of these clear decisions on what I should and should not be doing, what things I should cut out and what things I need to add. And so by having that direction, now I can make a decision very clearly and go and explain that decisions. Because especially when somebody is asking you to be on the school board, they're asking you to do something good. And they're like, well, why would you say no? What you don't even have a good reason to say no. But if I can come back to them and say, I'm sorry, I would love to help, but I can't, because my priority is with my kids. And I can't take that time away from my kids because I've only got them till they're 18 and then they're gone. And it's so critical to know what your purpose is.
I agree 110%. And I think for me, that was a lesson that was hard learned. I don't even know that if I would have listened, if somebody would have said it to me, honestly, because I was that
at 20, no way.
Yeah. I mean, I was very much like, oh, I can do all the things, I'm high energy, and I am all those things. I'm high energy, and I'm, dedicated, and I'm motivated, and I'm, the hashtag hustle, hashtag grind. I was literally that person. I made sure of it. But, like you said, I was giving up on the great things because of the good things. And it wasn't until I started having a lot of personal, relationship issues, personal family issues, that it literally smacked me in the face like a 2x4.
Yep.
And then it woke me up. And luckily I was able to pull my pieces of my life back together, but it could have been so much worse.
Yeah.
It could have been. And I've, heard the horror stories from people that, haven't made those decisions. So, I mean, I really love that you kind of brought it in that perspective, because I think it's so true.
It is. And I know we have different audiences, and I know somebody will relate to you differently than they relate to me, and somebody will resonate you compared to how I am and what my personality is and how things happen. And quite frankly, I talk with a lot of men. And the thing that comes out is we have a society, again, that's being pushed on results. It's being pushed on, we gauge your success based on what you've done, not on who you are. And I have walked with men on this journey when they were getting down. They've got $1 million plus company, or they've got all of these things in there, but frankly, their physical life is falling apart. And I know you're a nutritionist, so you'll understand this. But what I talk to them about is the fact that this path that we're walking down in life, there's two sides to this thing. One of it is the path to success and however you define that success. On the other side, though, is this nervous breakdown. So the more successful that we become, the more that we cut out the things that are giving us life, the things that are feeding us emotionally, physically, spiritually, and socially. We cut those things out. And it could be as simple as, hey, I used to go work out every morning, or I used to go play ball 2 times a week, or whatever that was. We've cut that out in the endeavor because the world is telling us that success is based on your results. So I need to have more of the results. When you cross that line, again, this line is razor thin that separates this path to success and this path to nervous breakdown. And I've talked with guys that have been on the verge of this, and they physically, when we start talking, they physically start to break down. Now, again, I 100% know, you talk to 20-year-old me, I'd be like, eye roll, kind of like, what the heck? Yeah. I mean, like, that's just, but I can tell you, you believe, especially men believe, and probably women too, but you believe 100% that you can handle all of the chaos that's going on. And in my own personal life, I have been attracted to that chaos simply because of my upbringing. I'm comfortable in the chaos. I'm comfortable with all of the confusion because I've had to figure out how to handle it. And so I go and I seek it. I embrace it. And then at the end of the week, I can remember multiple events. At the end of the week, I'm sitting there. I am dog tired, dead tired. I don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm a very outgoing extrovert type person. I get energy from people. After that week, I'm like, don't talk to me. I don't want to see you. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm like, I'm going to find my little cubby hole and I'm going to hide away forever. And it took me, again, 40 plus years to realize that even though I'm attracted to chaos, even though I'm attracted to those situations that demand high adaptability, quick decision-making, gut feeling decision type things, even though I'm attracted to that, it drains every ounce of energy from me in every way possible. You just get tired of making decisions. You get a lot of decision fatigue. You get tired of being able to deal with everybody else's drama and their baggage that they're coming along. Yeah. Physically, because I'm on my feet or raw, I'm physically tired. So I'm drained on every possible way. And then I'm sitting here like, oh no, I'm a man. I should be able to step up. Now, here's the thing. And I'm going way down these rabbit holes, but I
think it's important.
It's really important, especially with chaos, because here's what happens. And this is what I see a lot, especially in men, is that it tends to lead to an addiction or an indulgence, because they have to find some way to be able to escape, to release all of that stress and all of that pressure. And that leads them into this path of an addiction of some sort. What I really, and this is the part that I struggle with trying to be able to get people to understand, is that oftentimes, yes, there's people that are addicted because of all different ideas and sorts, but typically, not always, but typically, that addiction stems from something that happened prior. Not from that exact moment of, hey, I'm going to take this drug, or I'm going to drink this drink, or I'm going to do whatever. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a drug. It could be an addiction to fitness. It could be an addiction to, there's all kinds of things. Again, taking something that's good, allowing that to become an addiction, the adrenaline rush. I've seen guys addicted to the adrenaline rush. Yeah. And all of these things are releases because you're not controlling the chaos and you're not realizing, okay, I've got to put boundaries on these situations and how am I going to deal with it? And the first step is, number one, to recognize. That's what it was for me. I had to recognize the fact that I'm drawn into these chaotic situations. I had to recognize that I love this chaos. I love being the fixer, the fireman to come out, put out all the fires. I love that. I thrive on that.
It's part of your identity.
It is. It really is.
I'm the same.
But it's also unhealthy. Mm-hmm. It's also one of those things that drains me so much. So I have to make sure that if I'm doing that, which I love to do, that I have to limit it, and I'm putting things back, and I'm keeping that, what we were talking about earlier, I'm keeping that balance of how am I taking care of myself on all 4 levels. And I shared this previously, but making sure that I'm taking care of myself physically. Am I eating correctly? Am I exercising? Am I doing those kinds of things? Am I building my social network and building the relationships that sustain me? Whether that's a small group of men, whether it's an accountability group, it's a community, a mastermind, whatever. And even in that part of it, the relationships, that's really critical to have a mentor, a coach, somebody that can say, hey, look here, you got a blind spot. You better check this out. Make sure it doesn't get too far off. And then we're talking about spiritual, making sure that you take the time to be able to reflect, look at your life. And then the last one is the mental part of it and making sure that you're continually learning, whether it's about yourself or having more skill sets and just, again, continuing to build on that. So anyway, this topic, I love this topic. I truly hope, and I don't know, I haven't been able to watch the chat thread, but I would love to hear questions or comments. What are you guys struggling with? What is the challenges that you're dealing with And whether you resonate with me or resonate with Maria, how can we help you? Because I think, and I believe this about you too, is that our core is we want to help those that we come in contact with and leave a better impact and help you be able to kind of overcome some of these things, because we're not built to live in isolation. We're not built to do life on our own. That's not how we are. Regardless of the John Wayne cowboy, pick me up by my bootstraps kind of a thing, that's not how we live. It's impossible.
No. And I think you hit on a bunch of good points, but I think there are so many stereotypes that surround how men are supposed to react to things and how women are supposed to react to things. And they're flawed on like 1,000 levels. But, point blank is, there are struggles on both ends. And, at the end of the day, stress is stress. Stress is stress. And you have to figure out, what are your triggers? And you mentioned that, you're drawn to chaos. I'm also drawn to chaos. And I had to do much like you said, and figure out like what my boundaries were, because I am at the very core of every single thing that I do, whether it's from my business world or my wellness, nutrition world, you dig it back to the core level. And I am a helper. I want to help. And I think that's so important to know that, but also you mentioned self-care, to be able to say, okay, well, I can give, but there's that meme that goes around that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
And that's so true. You can't, and I was trying to do that for so long, and it sounds like you did the same. And it's just not a healthy place to be. Something's got to give. And that does lead to addictions. And when we hear of addictions, we typically go to drugs or alcohol or porn or whatever. And yes, those are all addictions. And those are, things that people use to escape from the stresses of everyday life. But there's so many other things that aren't considered, bad or wrong or, a problem that become just as much as an addiction. And for me, a lot of it was the worse that my personal life got, the more I tried to hide from it and dug more into work, because I felt like that was easier. But, that was become an addiction. You mentioned working out in the past has been an addiction for me. Anything that you're doing to escape what's going on in your normal life and not actually deal with the real issues, those can be addictions, no matter if they're good things or not. And I think defining that, I think, is super important to do. And, I agree with what Tim said, that, we've been there and we understand that it is a normal part of life, but it doesn't have to be. There are ways to establish your boundaries, to figure out your self-care, to figure out how to balance your life to where, they're not in opposition of each other. They're blending together. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the boundaries, and I'll share this, and I'm going to share a quick story, but one of the boundaries that I had to realize after coming out of one of the events that I was helping build and schedule and everything, I came out of that event and I was struggling with the leadership of the event and the fact that there, frankly, was no leadership in that event. They weren't doing anything they were supposed to be doing. So I was really struggling with that. And I had done this event for 3 years in a row, 3 years straight. And every time I came out of it, I was like, oh, well, next year it's going to be different. They told me that it's going to be different. Next year it's going to be this. And next year they're going to have this ready. And next year I kept saying that 3 years in a row. I said that after this event. And it wasn't until my mentor looked at me and said, dude, if it hasn't changed, if there is no action behind their words, it will not change next year. You need to step out of that until you see some action on that leadership's part. So I had to look at that and seriously look at it. I believe 100%, and because I want to see the good in people, I believe 100% of what they were saying. And by believing that, it ended up creating a situation where it's like, no, it's going to be better next time. I know it's going to be better. That's the optimistic side of me saying that, yeah, it's going to be better because they said it's going to be better. But yet the actions weren't backing up what their words were. And the actions weren't coming in consistent or congruency with what that was going on. So that year, I'll call it the catalyst or my breaking point in that 1 year. I don't remember if I shared this with you directly or not, but I'm going to share it here because I think it's important. For me, my biggest challenge, my biggest thing was I hit a breaking point where my anger just came out and I basically blew up. Now I've got 3 kids. I've got one that's now 21. So we're talking 2 years ago. So he was 19. I had a 17-year-old. All of my boys are teenagers. So they understood kind of what was going on. Long story short, I was still in the e-com business. E-com business is really stressful around fourth quarter because you got to sell everything. That's what's going on. It's super stressful. In addition to that, we have family obligations, whether it's your own personal family or extended family or whatever. And so I was coming in to December already tired from Black Friday, all of the sales, all the whole week of everything that was going on. And then I went to my parents' house. And all of those things that are happening, there was a lot of emotional things that were going on. And then in addition to that, there was a leak in the basement and the whole basement flooded at my parents' house. So immediately, me being the helper, loving the chaos, I jump in, I'm going to help out. We're going to do all this stuff. We had to leave the next day. So all of this pressure, all of this stress, all of this mental part of it, not being able to get enough sleep, driving 11 hours back to Michigan, the whole 12 hours, whatever it was, doing all of these things. We come home and my garage door falls down and I can't get in. It's broken. And something clicked in my head and I went all MMA, WWE, whatever you want to call it. I'm throwing the flying elbows at this thing. I'm kicking it. I'm doing whatever I can to get through it. Because in the back of my mind, it's like, this is just another thing that I got to accomplish. This is just another thing I got to get through. And it just clicked. And all of a sudden, this little warning sound starts clinging in the back of my head. Like, hey, dude, what are you doing? Your whole family's sitting in the van watching you go crazy on this door. And that one piece in there, I realized I had to go back and I had to apologize to both my kids as well as to my wife and explain, look, these actions, you obviously don't respect the actions, but you still have to honor me as a dad and go through that whole process and apologize. And look, I was wrong for acting this way. But that was my wake-up call. Because at that point in time, that's when I was able to connect with a mentor and say, look, I'm angry. I know I'm angry. I'm dealing with these anger issues because all of these things that are piling up, I don't have any release. I don't have any way to get out of it. And I'm dealing with this on a regular basis. And I need to know how to fix it. And that's when some of this boundaries of, well, you always take everybody at their word and believe everything that they're going to say. So how are you going to stop that? Look at their actions, not at their words. And a lot of processes, I mean, we're talking 2 years of learning how to be able to overcome some of the anger issues and some of that pent up emotion that I've got. And hopefully that, I don't know why I was just possessed to actually tell that story, but hopefully it helps somebody that's out there.
No,
this is important.
I think it's good. And I think, everybody has their moment, their aha moments, their straw that broke the camel's back moments. And, they come out in different ways. For some people, anger, for some people, lots of things. And what I've found, from my personal experience is, I legit had a breakdown and it was early last year, like complete mega breakdown. And I share this on my podcast, so I'm not going to go through the whole story, but, it's usually not the one thing. So for you, it probably wasn't the garage door. It was just all the things, and more than likely from forever that you've never dealt with. Because for me, whenever I broke down, it was not, at that moment. Yes, I was going through high stress, but I've been through high stress my entire life. It's normal, sadly, for me. But it was just, I couldn't take one more thing. And so then all the things from my entire life started popping up. And I think that's why what we were mentioning before about self-care and really, taking time to take care of yourself, taking time for rest. I mean, I've always been great with the eating and the fitness. I'm in the wellness world, but I was terrible at resting because again, that mega thrive and drive and hustle mentality, I was sleeping 2 and 3 hours a night. So, self-care, people always straight go to, working out and eating good. And those are super important. I'm not saying they're not, but I did all those things, but I didn't do lots of the other things. Yeah. And I think it's important to kind of mention all that, usually if somebody hits rock bottom, it's called rock bottom for a reason, because they've been through all the things before that leads to that defining moment. And then they just implode. And, it's important, if you're in that place, to be able to dig your way out of it. It's even more important to try to not get there by literally dealing with the things as it comes up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Where do you want to go from here? Because we can keep going down.
Well, we could. And I swear, every time that you tell your stories, I could tell a same story. I mean, that's pretty well the same. I swear, we keep joking around that we're like brother and sister from another mother. And it's, I hear so much of my own story in your story, but with a masculine, from a man's standpoint, which I think is also important because again, we kind of approach things differently, not always, but typically between men and women, our experiences are a little bit different, and how we're treated a lot of times based on that is a little bit different. Men are typically expected to be the great providers and, to be able to, be the rock of the family and all these things. And, I think I've never been a man before, so I can't 100% say, but I know from stuff I've went through with my husband, whenever he had his own breakdown, he just couldn't be the rock anymore because he was imploding from the inside. And yet he just kept trying to be that because he thought he had to be,
Yeah.
And I think in this society, there's still very much this stereotype that men, can't feel. And I've got a good friend, his name is Andy Grant. He has a podcast called Real Men Feel, and he talks about those very things because, it's important to realize that, we're all human. We all have emotions. It doesn't matter, what gender you are. It doesn't even freaking matter. We all have emotions, and to still have these stereotypes that, men can't be soft and men can't have feelings and men have to be the rock, is still kind of flawed in my opinion.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong in the aspect of there is truly a sense of adventure that lies at the heart of every man. John Eldridge wrote a book called Wild at Heart, and man, does that resonate with me.
I read that.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, I love the great adventure. I love embracing that. And I think that's what makes, there's so many things that make us unique and different, not just between men and women, but each individual. We all have different ways to be able to look at that. What I truly am looking at or seeing is, where do you find your value? And how do you allow your value to be defined? Now, this is from a man's perspective, and I'd love to hear your take on this as well. But from a man's perspective, the way that I see people fleshing this out and becoming and showing what their value is typically, especially for men, is typically in what they do. And if you ever notice, especially at network meetings, you go and say, hey, what do you do? What do you do? I've changed that personally. So what I do when I'm going to a network meeting, and I did this with you when we first met, is like, so tell me a little bit about your journey, because that now tells me more about who you are. And I can value you as an individual rather than define it by what it is that you do. Mm-hmm. And so that's the first thing that I think, especially as men, we have to break that. From a man looking at a woman, what I see is a lot of women find their value in their home and in their family. And they always identify with that. And so there's a lot of things that happen when the kids are gone, that empty nest syndrome. All of a sudden, the woman doesn't feel like she has any value because they're all gone. And that's simply not true. And I don't know if that's true because I'm speaking as a man about a woman, but that's just what I see from my perspective. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. But the key is this: you were created individual, unique, and you have skills and talents that only you have. You have experiences, you have all of those things. Put that and define that, and that now should become your value of who you are, rather than allowing the world or somebody else to define the value of what you do.
I absolutely 1000% agree. And I also agree with the fact that you said that, it ends up defining, your purpose and your value is, how well your children are doing in life, how well, your home is. Sadly, a lot of it ends up getting put on looks and, all that stuff. But, and I think that's why it's so hard when you feel that those things aren't, for me, like whenever I felt like I wasn't holding all the pieces together, I mentioned that I have a special needs kid. I have 7 kids, but my 11-year-old is autistic. And, you think by child number 5, you got this parenting thing down, just like down, it's just like, boom, I can just do this all day. Right. And then, surprise, you end up with a special needs kid, and you literally have to go back to square one and relearn everything that you thought you ever knew. And for me, that kind of started this, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing because, for all of you that don't know much about autism, you literally feel like you have a different kid every day, which we talked before we went on air that that's just how kids are anyway, but it's just like amplified with special needs. And you're not sure what they want. You're not sure what to do. You start questioning, your very being as a parent. Can I do this, type of thing. And, it was rough the first few years, just trying to regain my identity, because we get these identities, I wanted to be the perfect mom. Was I the perfect mom? No, I was by far not the perfect mom, but I wanted to be,
Welcome to chaos.
Exactly. I wanted to be the perfect mom. And this was just another reminder about how far I was away from, Mom of the Year award that I was never going to get anyway. But, it was just more of those things. And again, I didn't deal with my feelings on it. I didn't reach out for help. I'm the helper. I'm the fixer. So a lot of times, and you probably can identify with this, when you're the
100%.
helper, you're the fixer, you don't ask for help. And I didn't ask for help. Instead, I isolated myself. because I don't have it together. I don't even have the ability to pretend like I have it all together at this moment. So I hid. I just emotionally hid. I cut off ties from pretty much anybody that was close to me. And, that was a terrible decision. And I think a lot of people, when they're going through tough times, they isolate themselves. And I think one of the things that we mentioned earlier about, reach out because, I've been there, Tim's been there, and isolating yourself is definitely not the way to go. You're just going to end up pushing yourself farther into just inevitable breakdown.
Can I on that? And I don't want to breeze over this because I
No.
believe 100% isolation is the biggest lie that if you fall prey to that, let me put it this way. If you fall prey to this lie that you're the only one that's ever gone through something, it is terminal.
Yep.
That is the only thing that's terminal. Everything else is fixable.
Yep.
It's that one thing, because as you step into that, and if you believe, and like I said, if you believe you're the only one that's ever gone through that, that leads to isolation. Isolation then leads to all sorts of addictions or depressions or all kinds of mental health issues. It leads to a ton of different things. And some people are able to get hit in the face and like, oh yeah, I need to wake up. But the point in this, and this is what I've shared this on several panelists, and everybody says, what's the biggest challenge? What's this or whatever? I'm telling you right now, that is the number one challenge that you will face as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, a dad, a mom, as a leader. That is the number one thing. And you have to be willing to accept the fact that you're not perfect, that you're living in a chaotic world, and that you need help to be able to overcome and see some of the things that you just can't see.
I just want to be like, hallelujah. That's what I want to do right now, because that is literally, I feel like at this point in time in my life, whatever happens with my businesses, on each side, I don't even care. I feel like my purpose is literally I've been the one that tried to pretend like they had it all together, to wear my mask and isolate myself because I could do it, and I can't do it all. And we're not meant to be isolated, like you mentioned. And I have made my purpose to be real, raw, and authentic, and share all the dirty, awful, terrible skeletons in my closet, and to share every single thing that I've done great, every single thing I've done horrible, everything in between, much to my mother's demise. She hates that I do this. She actually despises the fact that I do this, but I've told her, I feel like this is my purpose. I feel that it is my purpose. And if I share my stories, I share the things I've been through, I share my reactions to it and the way I should have done it. If I help one person, that I feel successful. That's my definition of success. It's not what I used to define it as. And I think, that is an important thing to kind of touch on, is this, your purpose should be your driving force.
100%.
And it should.
And the guiding star. It's the guiding star. And the as we step into that idea, as far as the purpose and everything, I have talked to so many people that are embarrassed to share their experiences. There's two things that I see that stop people. Number one is the hurt, because they still feel the pain, and it's very difficult to heal through that pain. And I understand that. And sometimes you need to just step back and heal because you've been hurt very badly. Number two, though, is the fact of it's an appearance of being weak. And it is so the opposite of the truth. Because if you're not willing to share the experiences and the challenges that you've gone through, how are you going to be able to turn around and help somebody else? Because people will resonate with those. I know when I told my story, I had 2 or 3 guys that came up to me after telling about the breakdown thing at one of the events. And they're like, dude, I'm right there. I know exactly what you're saying. And I was able to leave an impact on those 2 or 3. Did it resonate with everybody? Of course not. We don't resonate with everybody.
Yeah.
But if I can encourage anybody out there that might be hesitant to share your experiences, to share some of the weaknesses that in your life, I guess why? Because you have no idea the power that you have just in those experiences to be able to reach back and help somebody else. And let me also speak this directly to men, because you're talking about how you felt as far as a mom. As a dad, we're supposed to have all of the answers. As a man, we're supposed to have all of the answers. And and I've seen it in my own life. There's times when I come to, I am not a mechanic. I cannot figure out cars at all. I don't know anything about cars, but yet I feel this weight of, I need to know how to fix the car. I need to know how to change the spark plugs or whatever it is. That is so not me. But every time I run into that, I'm like, man, I'm such an idiot. How come I'm such an idiot? How come I didn't learn how to do this? How come I don't know? Because all of the pressures of everybody are telling me that I'm supposed to know how to do this. And it's not me though.
Yeah.
And I had to overcome and be able to look at that. And I guarantee you 100%, any of the men that are listening, they've experienced, they know exactly what I'm talking about, because we've had that pressure that we always have to have the answers. It's not just being the rock. We always have to have the answers. We always have to have the solution. So when our wife comes to us, that's the reason why we respond like, well, I can fix this. And my wife is like, no, I don't want you to fix it. I just want you to listen
Please
to me.
don't fix it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just amazing when we start looking at this and breaking this down. The true power comes in our weakness. The true ability to help other people comes in our weaknesses. And it's those weaknesses that make you who you are. And whether those weaknesses are revealed to you through the chaos, whether those are revealed to you through the challenges of becoming a better person, it's only in that we grow. And personally, I struggled with this for a long time because like, how could God let me go through this problem? How could God give me this or let me hit this situation? Now looking back, I'm like, man, I'm so thankful he did. I'm so thankful he put this in my life. I'm so thankful that he moved me. Man, we've moved as a family 10 different times in 4 different states. People are like, what the heck? I'm like, well, it was just part of our life. We just had to move because God moved me in these different areas. And he put these circumstances, I had nothing else. And that's it. You got to move. So anyway, I'm thankful at this point in time. And I can truly say this, I'm very thankful for all of the challenges, all of the experiences, because they've made me who I am. And it's given me a platform to be able to talk and help other people that are going through it.
I feel the same way. I mean, if you would have asked me several years ago if I was thankful for all the horrible, horrible things I've gone through, I would have been like, well, no, know. But now coming out of the other side of it, of actually really dealing with the healing side of it, I think that's part of it. You have to heal. You have to really deal 100%. With it to feel that way. But I'm on the other side of it now, and I am 100% thankful, even for the most horrible things that I've went for. I'm thankful for what I know now, because I could never speak to some of the people I speak to. I could never help some of the people that I help with some very sensitive topics if I had also not been through those things myself. So I think sometimes we're placed, in a path for a reason. And I think that, we deal with the healing of some of these things, and then we use that as a catalyst to help other people. And I think being vulnerable has to be a part of that, or because if you're not vulnerable, you're never really going to be able to get through and help that person.
Yep. Yeah. And you said something there, and I just want to make sure that we're real clear, because I know you believe this. When you say when we heal, a lot of times it's not necessarily us having the ability to heal ourselves.
No. Yeah.
It's the fact that other people have to come alongside. That's why we have doctors and coaches and mentors and people that can say, look, I know this is a challenge. My mentor, I love him to death, and I appreciate everything that he's done. We were sitting down at a breakfast table with a group of other guys, and he asked me about a topic, and I responded in a way, and he looked over at me and he said, I think we should talk afterwards. He recognized that there was an intense anger and an intense bitterness about a situation. And he said, I want to help you with that. And he had the time and the patience, because he had gone through something similar, to be able to look at me and say, hey, let's talk afterwards. Not in this setting, but let's talk afterwards. And by him stepping out, it gave me the ability to be able to now look at that and say, you're right, I do need help. And I had enough trust with him and a relationship with him, so that now after 2 years, we've been working on stuff and being able to come through that. I had to be willing to accept it, number one. Number two is the fact that he had to be willing to reach out. And so there's 2 pieces of that. If you're in a position right now where you're looking back at all of the experiences, and I'm talking to whoever's listening right now, where you can't look back and say, I'm thankful, it's okay. There's times that you need to heal. There's times when you're going to be able to look at that and say, okay, I'm hurting, and it's okay to hurt. It's okay to have that feeling of pain. So reach out. If I don't know you, or if Maria does, just make sure you reach out to us, because we want to help you. And I know that it's going to be a process. We know that it's going to take a lot of time. But the goal is for you to grow. The goal is for you to become a better person, heal through that, and now you can turn around and help the next person. Because Absolutely. I had people doing that in my life. I want to do that in others and pay it forward. And then eventually you will too.
And I'm the same way. And I 100% agree. There's no way that I could have done it by myself. If I could have done it by myself, I would have done it all the years that I didn't, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And, there's steps and there's processes to go through, and, your version may look a little different, but, for me, you go through, I went through a very angry time when I first started dealing with it. I was just angry. How could anybody hurt me like that? How could I go through these things? How could, like you said, God allow me to go through some of the things that I've been through? And I think anger is a part of it. It's almost, it's almost like they say the processes of grief. You go through the processes of grief kind of for healing because,
Yep.
You're kind of grieving who you were. You're grieving the things you went through. You're grieving who you thought you should have, would have, could have been if all those things hadn't happened. And, it's a process. And I wrote an entire book. I have a novel and I will never publish it. I wrote it with the intention to publish it, but it was a very angry, you did this is what happened. It was a very angry writing, and I finished it, and it did help me with my healing. It was a portion of helping, but I also realized that I would never publish it because it was just for me. It was very angry, but I was during that process, it was a process that I was having to go through, and to get it out on paper, I think was very therapeutic. And I actually have, they don't have to write a novel, but, have a journal, have a diary, get those things out of your head because you're entitled to feel them. It's not that you're not entitled to feel them, but it doesn't serve any purpose to call people out. It doesn't serve any purpose to go forward with a lot of the angry things that, you would go forward with if it was during those moments that you're writing those. So I think, part of the process for people in healing, I think is getting it out of your head and putting it on paper.
That is so key. I have a journal too that I write in, and I do that as well. And when I'm really, really frustrated, and that's part of the healing process and part of the ability to control the chaos. And I know we keep coming back to that word, but it's absolutely key in this, is I have to put down exactly what's going on. And I define that. When I quantify it, it now becomes smaller rather than being so large. Because if we just keep it in our minds, the one thing I've noticed is whether it's a fear-based kind of a thing or where you're looking at it, and fear is really the emotion that your response to something that's dangerous, something that's a threat, something that's painful. That's what fear is. And so if you're fearful of something and you don't quantify it or identify it, it borrows weight from everything else that's going on in your life, whether it's a political thing or a personal thing or a business thing, it borrows weight. So I have to, and that's part of what I do is I journal and write that down. And that gives me the ability to be able to identify it, put it in that box. And now I can actually come up with solutions for it. And I have a whole process on how to be able to do that, but
Absolutely.
we're probably running out of time. I don't know.
Absolutely. No. And I think that's important, to know. And I would say, we've been talking for a while now. So, I'll just go ahead and say that if anybody's listened to any of this and you're kind of hearing some truths, you're hearing that you're in the middle of your own type of chaos, and you're not really sure, how to manage the chaos. There is a way to manage the chaos. It's managed chaos. That's what life is. And, reach out to Tim, reach out to myself. We'll be more than happy to talk to you about it. We've been there, we're not just saying it, from our high horse of awesomeness, we are saying it from the place that we've been through all the things, and we're know
saying it from our scars.
Yeah, exactly. And
I think
that's the key. I think that's the key is, being able to talk from a place of vulnerability and talk from a place I've been there. I don't have nobody has all the answers, but we have some of the answers because we've been through them.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's like my wife. Sometimes you're not looking for a solution. You're just looking for, how can I start a healing process? How can I have somebody listen to me? And I need a little empathy. I need a little care.
Absolutely.
And men need that as much as women do, regardless of what our society says. I run a men's group, and every Tuesday we get in there and people are like, oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe this week. You wouldn't believe the challenges. And on some of my coaching calls, sometimes we don't even talk about business. Although I'm engaged for business, we don't even talk about business. It's like, dude, I can't even get my head wrapped around business right now. I just had 2 sick kids. My wife was sick. My dog is surgery, this and this and this and this. And it's like, okay, let's deal with this first, and then we can work on business.
I'm the same way. I say a lot of my coaching clients, we end up talking about just the personal things of just managing the chaos of life. And before we even get to the business, but I think that's part of it, because again, we can't compartmentalize. We think we can do that, but our life leaks out into each other, and there's just no way of effectively. No.
Yeah, it's impossible to compartmentalize. Impossible.
Oh,
totally impossible.
Well, all right. So I will just leave it with this. If you all want to chat, or you want to, just touch base on anything that you're struggling with, I will, in the notes, I'll leave how to get a hold of Tim or myself. And, I'm going to leave you with the fact that you're not alone. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It's not just you. You're not alone.
Yep.
And there's no reason to fear being vulnerable.
Yep. Yeah. I can't even add anything else to that. That's so awesome. Right there. Boom. Mic
right.
drop.
Mic drop. Bam. All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate talking to you. I always love talking to you.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Now I could try